Good morning, everybody. I'm Misha. I love to link insulin resistance to diseases and disorders that we suffer from, so all of us can understand why we're feeling sick and how easily we can get better without all the medications and stuff. And it's really important to understand this one thing called insulin resistance because doctors and scientists are now saying it's at the root of 95% of our health disorders that are lifestyle related. So one of the doctors who talks about that a lot is Dr. Bickman. He has a doctorate. He's not a practicing medical physician, but he studies metabolism. That's his specialty. So um, and he's been educating doctors around the world. That's where my information comes from. I am not the guru here. I'm just passing on information for everyone to understand. The other day, I had somebody ask me about joint problems. And so I apologize that I've been gone for a couple of days, but we're here. We're going to talk about joints today and how insulin resistance is causing your joint problems. Because if you can understand that, if you have a brain like mine, then maybe you can understand what's happening. And as I'm talking about this, if you see yourself in any of the list up there, go ahead and ask questions because I want to either give you the answers or do a whole live on that on Monday, whatever. But I want to answer your questions. So welcome in everybody. Tawny, I can't read everybody's names. Hologram dude, Luis. Welcome in, you guys. So your joints and insulin resistance. First, let's understand insulin resistance really simply. It's a blood sugar disorder, okay, that causes a hormonal disorder that causes havoc to go on inside our bodies. So in today's world, not only are we eating way too often, and we have all these people telling us we should eat every 2 hours, I want to explain why that's not the right thing to do. I'm going to explain really quickly how this all happens. So the food we have today, even our raw organic food, is very different than it was 50 years ago when I was a kid. Fiber has been stripped out, enzymes have been stripped out in order to make our foods grow bigger and plumper, right? But then our farming practices mean that our foods are far less nutrient dense. Between 40 and 75%, there's some nutrients in beets that used to be one of the highest nutrient things we could eat, that it's 75% less in certain nutrients. And so we wonder why we're trying to eat healthier, but we're just not getting better. And look, I've had vegetarians and pescatarians who are eating a whole raw food diet who are still getting sick. We have to understand that our food today is very, very different than it ever was. And that's at the root of all of this illness. I think I saw Max. Max, if you're still here, welcome in. So when we understand that, and then they're telling us to eat every 2 hours, what we're really doing is spiking our blood sugars. Understand that food is energy for your body. Food is energy for your cells. Brandy, did you use my link to order? I'd love to know that. So then, you guys, food is energy. Our cells all need energy. There's not a cell that they've looked at in the human body that does not have insulin receptors on them. Now, when our blood sugar rises, our body cues our pancreas to produce more insulin because we can only have about a teaspoon of sugar in our system or we start to have problems. Our blood gets thick, it gets scratchy and starts damaging things, and we have a whole other load of dysregulation that goes on. So insulin comes out. Why insulin? Insulin is a hormone. One of its jobs, and its primary job, I would say, is to carry that energy to the cells, and it has a key to get that energy into the cell. So insulin grabs a hold of the energy, the glucose that we have in our system, transports it to the cells, knocks on the door of the cell, and the cell says, yeah, I need energy. And so it opens the door, lets the energy in, insulin waves goodbye, thank you, I'll be back later. But when we're eating so often, we're continually, I'm trying to mince words here, we're continually spiking that insulin. So now in a state of high blood sugar all the time and high insulin all the time, those cells that were so happy to get that insulin message, to get the energy in, are now like, I'm done. You've overwhelmed me. They're getting sick because of too much energy. A number of things happen. So 3 things happen when you start to hit what we call insulin resistance. your cells stop reacting to insulin. So many cells are having a problem. They can't do their jobs. They can't produce other hormones and enzymes. So that's going wrong. Then we have cells who are just doing their job, taking in normal amounts of insulin, doing sugar whenever they need, and that's it. And then there are cells who take up too much. All of this is your metabolic function, and it's awry, it's out of whack when we have insulin resistance. Insulin is like a bully in your bloodstream. It takes precedence over almost everything else, and it can mess up things like thyroid hormones, sex hormones, cortisol, your hunger, your satiety hormones. It can override the actions of all of those in basic terms. So we need to understand that eating food that's imperfect is what's causing us to be sick. But now, how does this insulin resistance, when we get to this state where our body's just putting out insulin all the time and our cells are now resistant to it, what happens to your joints? How does this even matter with your joints? Well, let's dive into some of that because there's a lot of things that happen. And I got to look at my notes because I can't remember all of them, you guys. Like I said, I'm not the guru. So, one of the things that happens with your joints and arthritis, so osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, bone loss, osteopenia. Look, what happens is you have so much inflammation in your body. Insulin, that extra sugar, that extra insulin is causing areas of extreme inflammation. That, especially when it starts in your gut, starts to leak out to the rest of your body. So insulin resistance, the body becomes resistant to insulin throughout the body. But one of the major places is your gut. When it starts to have too much sugar and it gets inflamed, that inflammation starts to leak out into the rest of the body. Your gut is your largest internal organ. And when it's sick, the rest of the body gets sick too. So much so that a lot of doctors who deal with autoimmune disease are now saying that autoimmune disease is really an inflammatory disease or an the inflammation starts the disease. So, and there's a number of autoimmune diseases that are carried in that. So, if you have someone or know someone with an autoimmune type disorder, maybe they should take a look at their gut health. And that's a fast, simple way to start taking care of your health and relieving problems. It's not crazy stuff. Okay. So inflammation, we know that inflammation starts to degrade the joints. You start to lose synovial tissue. Your ligaments and your tendons all start to degrade, and the meniscal tissue in your knees, the labrum in your hips and your arms, that all starts to degrade with such high amounts of inflammation. And that inflammation can be driven by insulin resistance. Now, I'm going to pause for a second because inflammation can cause you to be more insulin resistant, but insulin resistance can definitely make you more inflamed. So it's another one of those bidirectional things where if you've had an injury or a lot of inflammation, that's a time when you really need to pay attention to your blood sugars and how you're eating to keep your insulin under control, because it can all spiral out of control if you don't understand how they link together. But a lot of our joint pain, our joint issues stem from this inflammation and this degradation going on throughout the joints. I know. I was there. I've lost 2 hips. I've lost a knee. My right knee was supposed to be replaced 2 years ago because it was degrading. The meniscal space was uneven. The tendons, the ligaments, I got that one backwards. The ligaments were so degraded that my knee would just slip out of joint. In laying in bed, my knee would like fall out of joint and I would have to put it back in place so I could even roll over. I would walk and only be able to take a few steps because my knee would slide out. And I had good muscle. So I didn't know then that all of that was caused by insulin resistance. So how is it that my knee was slipping out of joint all the time 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I don't have problems with it at all now? The only thing I did was address my insulin resistance. I, in fact, work out less now than I did before, which is not something I'm really proud of. But I had strong muscles, and yet my knee was always at risk. All of my joints were, but now they're not because I've addressed insulin resistance. The inflammation is down. If you've ever looked down at your knees, this happened to me, you guys. So have you ever looked down at your joints or your knees and been like, where did my knees go? It looks like there's grapefruits on the ends of my knees. Um, that kind of inflammation is eating up your joints. So when you see that swelling around your knees, that inflammation, understand it's not just that it's not pretty to look at. There's a lot of damage going on inside of your body when you see that. I don't know if there was a question that I missed. If I missed a question, please re-ask it. I'd love to try and answer. Okay. So I remember after starting to address my insulin resistance a couple of months in, I sat down in the summertime, had shorts on, was thinking about stuff, just looked down, saw my knees, and I was like, I can see my kneecaps again. There's no longer this grapefruit. Like I can see the little nice indentation around my knee. All of that happened. And that was when I realized the inflammation was leaving my body. There was a reason I had more energy. There was a reason my joints weren't hurting. And that surgery that was supposed to happen in 2022 never had to happen. That knee that was so bad that they told me had to be replaced no longer needs to be replaced. Now, I'd had multiple naturopathic physicians tell me you can regrow your joint tissue. You can, and no other doctors were telling me that. The surgeons certainly weren't. The surgeons weren't telling me, hey, if you just change your diet a little and understand what's happening and why you're having this inflammation, you might not have to have that surgery. They're like, sign her up. Let's go get that surgery done. Nobody explained that our metabolism was what was causing my joints to fail, not age, not other stuff. So inflammation is the first one. Now, when I'm going to be talking a lot this morning about the system that I use to help me. So I am going to cover that a little bit, but inflammation is reduced by the system in two ways. The Unimate helps reduce inflammation because it's rich in antioxidants. It has anti-inflammatory properties to it, and they help reduce that systemic inflammation. So the tea that I'm drinking this morning is an anti-inflammatory. It's what helps keep that inflammation out of my gut, out of my joints, so that I feel better all around. And we're addressing insulin resistance because I'm in a 16-hour fast. And as is normal at this time of day, I'm about 15 hours into my 16-hour fast. Not even hungry, doesn't bother me at all. I actually feel better and more mental clarity now. When I start to eat later in the day is when I will actually start to slow down and feel like, oh, I just want to sit down for a little bit. I want to think things out. In the morning, I have such mental clarity and energy that it's unreal. And all I do is drink that tea. The other part of the system is the balance. And so how does that address your inflammation? Well, it's also addressing your inflammation because the fiber matrix in it is promoting that healthier gut microbiome that I talked about. So reducing the inflammation in the gut is balance's job. The pre-meal drink, that's helping the inflammation that I talked about that was so impactful in your gut. So those two things were probably the biggest part of why my joints started to feel better. But along with it, there is a problem with, I'm trying to find my notes and make sure this is, that I'm in the right place. So we also have oxidative stress. It's a big term, but oxidative stress is just like rust forming on metal. That's what's happening inside of our cells when we're insulin resistant. It's causing oxidation or rusty cells. That doesn't sound good, does it? And it's not good. It's not what we want. So your body starts producing these harmful molecules called reactive oxygen species, and they act like those rust spots inside your body. And when one little rust spot builds, then it starts to spread. You've seen metal, and metal can go fine for a long time, but once you get that one little infiltration of rust, it starts to spread throughout the metal, and you got to stop it, or pretty soon the whole piece of metal is rusty. That's basically what's happening inside our body and our joints. That oxidative stress is tearing everything down. This goes up because of those reactive oxygen species from insulin resistance being so high in our bodies. So we need to understand that keeping that oxidative stress down is not just about, I don't know what everybody talks about with oxidative stress, but you hear the word all the time. One of the big places it's going to affect you is in your joints. So make sure that you're taking care of that oxidative stress. Again, the system that I use is helping with that because it has antioxidants in the tea that I drink every morning. And those antioxidants help reduce those reactive oxygen species so that you don't have all that oxidative stress going on, and that the rusting inside your cells starts stopping when you have these antioxidants going into the cells. They're like little components that are helping you fight the good fight, right? That's really high in the tea that I drink. That's one of the reasons why my joints have all maintained as I get older now, instead of continuing to deteriorate like it was when I was younger. If you want some joint relief, you guys tired of your shoulders hurting, your knees hurting, your hips hurting, um, start paying attention to inflammation and oxidation throughout your body, because it's not just your joints that are suffering. So you have inflammation eating you up and you have this rust going on inside of your cells. No wonder you hurt. The tea helps with that, with the antioxidants. And then the balance, the pre-meal drink also has plant-based compounds that have antioxidants in them. So again, it's this double hit now for inflammation and oxidation. This is how we're starting to have so many people talk about better joint health while they're on the system. So another way that insulin resistance is causing joint pain is it's starving your joints. Okay. You're just not getting enough blood flow. So now you already have cells that are shutting down to the cues of insulin, and it's insulin is causing this reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress. But now, because of factors that I talk about on the heart day, but there's about 5 ways that insulin resistance is causing your blood flow to restrict. So not only is that restricted blood flow making your heart work harder, so now you're having a little bit of elevated blood pressure. People always think that elevated blood pressure with the joint deterioration is because of the pain. Well, yeah, the pain increases that, which is increasing insulin resistance. But insulin resistance that was causing the joint pain is also causing the blood pressure to rise. So don't think that just because you have joint pain, that blood pressure is all about your pain. It could be as much about your insulin resistance as it is about anything else. And if you have the two together, high blood pressure and joint pain, I would just say to think of yourself as insulin resistant and start getting it under control. And by the way, welcome in everybody who is here. And Samantha, thank you for sharing this out. It means a lot. Um, these do, by the way, I go live on multiple platforms, so this whole thing will be on YouTube later today. So you can just go to Brilliant Health with Misha on YouTube, and you'll be able to go watch all of the live streams that I do. Okay, so what's happening here is the blood vessels are restricted, they're getting smaller, they're getting tighter, they don't want to open up like they should, and so now you have less blood flow to the area. We need blood flow to our joints. That's what's carrying those nutrients that are allowing the cells to rebuild. Our blood flow is not just carrying sugar, it's carrying a lot of other nutrients. But if we're restricting the blood flow, we're essentially starving those joints, and now they just can't start to repair, because even when they need energy or good stuff, they're not getting it because the blood flow has been so highly reduced. Now, with blood flow, we know that by reversing insulin resistance, we're starting to open those arteries back up, those veins back up. We're starting to allow them to be more flexible. We're allowing we're allowing your heart rate to come down a little bit, so it's not pushing so hard and causing more heart problems. But we're starting to have more normal blood flow. And as blood flow gets back into that area, your joints can heal. Now, this is a conundrum, right? People think, well, if I've lost blood flow and my blood vessels have receded, how do I ever get blood flow to that area again? It's kind of crazy, you guys, but your bodies are amazing and they do amazing things when we give them the right tools and the right resources to work with. So your body can do a whole lot of repair in areas like nerve endings and blood flow and tissue repair and ligament repair and all of that stuff when our bodies have the right amount of energy from the right kinds of foods, and that we're not inundating it with this inflammation and oxidative stress. Case in point, I bet a lot of you didn't, I've never really talked about it. I fell in a weightlifting accident and had my thumb was crushed, and it's kind of funky. It won't work right now, but it was severed, completely severed. There was a flap of skin holding it on. So everything from about just below that knuckle forward had no blood flow. It had no blood flow. If when they replaced this thumb, the 5 tendons that run from the hand were severed. They're growing back, and that's how I even have movement. The surgeon was like, "It's crazy that you can even move that thumb, but I have blood flow." You can tell there's the tip of this thumb is pretty red. My body rebuilt those pathways. Your body will rebuild the pathways when the body has the right environment to do it in. But when it's full of inflammation, oxidative stress, and restricted blood flow, it's not going there. We have to reduce those things to affect your joints so that your joints can get the right nutrients and get what they need to be healthy again. So if you're older, 30, 40 years, mine started in my 30s, 40 years, 50 years, even if you're 60, 70. So I'm 60, you can still regrow and help your joints by understanding that we've got to get rid of inflammation, oxidation, and return blood flow. And those are all primary causes from insulin resistance. So it also, though, leads into your metabolic function. So isn't it funny that as we start to lose our joints, as we start to have these problems with our joints, so we know the inflammation, we know the oxidation, we know the reduced blood flow, but metabolism is one of the big pieces. In fact, it's funny that this piece was called out as separate because everything I've been talking about is your metabolism. But here we go with insulin resistance. When insulin cannot get the energy into the cells, it still senses this person's eating more sugar. I've got to store this somewhere because I've got another package to go pick up. And if I don't go get it, it's just going to build up and it's going to cause problems. So at this point, insulin is pushing all of that energy into fat cells. That's your storage unit. So now insulin is like, hey, none of the other cells want this package here. I'm going to put it in here and store it because I got to go pick up more packages because we're eating all the time. We're eating foods that are imperfect. We don't understand what's happening with our nutrition. But in this state, now your fat cells are growing. In some people, your fat cells will duplicate. Did you guys know that? Because I was always told that you're born with the same fat cells that you have at any age. But some people, a little over 30% of people will have this thing where their fat cells are hyperplastic, meaning they're like little bunny rabbits and they will grow. So how is it that somebody's extremely obese and doesn't show signs of diabetes, and yet somebody who's only mildly obese can be full-on diabetic? That's why the fat cells storing and how much they can store, and even at that, even if you only have the hypertrophic type of fat cells where they only grow so much, some people are just born with less fat cells. Some people's fat cells don't want to get as big. But at that point is when the blood sugar starts to spill back out, and now you start to be called diabetic. But along with that, you've put a lot of weight on your body between the fat cells and the inflammation, the fluid retention going on. So that in itself is harder on your joints. Now, we need to have some weight on our joints for our joints to be healthy, especially women over 50. I want to talk to you about that. Like, there's this push to be so super thin, and I am not an advocate for be as big as you want, love your body. I love your body. But if you're extremely obese, there's a problem, and loving yourself is understanding that the problem that's causing that needs to be addressed if you really care about your health and yourself. So, now, but women, when we're a little bit over 50 and we're going through menopause, one of the things so there's two things that are going to help you with your bones to not deteriorate as quickly. One is some weight bearing exercise. There's a reason why women who are mildly obese as they get older, not extremely obese, but not the very thin ones, have better bone density. It's because their body is bearing weight. Better yet, put a backpack on with some weight and go for a hike. We use some weight training to help your bone density. But with that also, so the fat is a big problem when we start having that, and your fat cells become inflammatory cells as well, pushing that inflammation in your system up, and now it's degrading your joints even more. I took the little side note because I want you to know, ladies, as we get older, we should be a little bit heavier, not extremely obese, but it's our bones need that weight. And if you're not doing weight bearing exercise, you should be doing weight bearing exercise. There was a big study I did when I was in college, and it was about women over 50 and what happens with their bones. And women who are not doing, which is speaking to me right now, who are not doing any weight training or exercise, were losing up to 8% of their bone mass a year. Women who were just doing aerobics were able to maintain. Women who added some weight bearing exercise, and I'm not talking about heavy lifting, I'm talking about 5, 10, 20 pounds extra in your weight in your workouts during the day. Put a weight belt on and walk around, do something, but that weight bearing increased their bone density as they grew older. So instead of decreasing bone density, you can increase it. Make sure you're doing some weight bearing exercise. Now, this is another place where insulin is causing problems with your bones overall in your joints, because when insulin is present, it starts to impede how the body functions in the breakdown and repair of your bones. So your bones are constantly going through this cycle of tearing down and building back up. So you have things called osteoblasts and osteoclasts. One tears down the old bone that needs to go, and the other kind of like paints on the new cells that need to be there. With insulin resistance, this whole process gets disrupted, and your bones are not building as much as they should. And so they're breaking down more than they should. And now you have some fragile bones, and that is driven from insulin resistance, messing with how your body can tear down and repair its own bone tissue. Okay. So inflammation, oxidation, reduced blood flow, excess weight, way too much weight on your bones will tear them down. And then this disruption of how your bones can tear down and rebuild. All of this is happening behind the scenes with insulin resistance. So people always are like, well, I'm not overweight. I've not been diagnosed as diabetic. Why does this matter to me? Maybe my heart rate's a little high, but what are you talking about? Why does it matter? Well, when you start to get older and as you age and understand that your bones and your joints are at risk, and you don't want to go through, like I've had 3 surgeries, guys, before anybody talked to me about insulin resistance. Both of my hips got replaced and one knee, because my joints were completely torn up and they were full of nodules. And the doctors told me with each one of my joints, because I was like, I'm not going to do this. They were like, if you don't do it, especially with the hips, your labrum is the cup inside is so broken that if it cracks anymore, you could lose the whole leg. So then I'd be like, okay, let's fix the hip. None of that needed to happen. Had anybody, like all of these naturopaths told me you could repair it, but not one of them told me how. So that's why I do what I do, because so many of us are given answers, but we're not given the how behind it, right? And that's important. So if you're worried about your joints or they're starting to hurt, there was a woman who talked to me the other day and said, yeah, I'm going to go have my hips checked out. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. You have all the other signs. Let's take care of your insulin resistance before you just run in and have a surgery. I'm very thankful that I'm walking and I don't have as much pain, but I died on the operating table on my first hip replacement. It was painful. It was excruciating. I still don't walk the same. And I didn't have to go through that. Had anybody ever talked about insulin resistance or educated on how your joints are deteriorating, and that it's not just, oh, you're getting older? That's some BS. Every time they tell you something is happening just because you're getting older, skin takes just because you're getting older, dark skin patches just because you're getting older, your skin being like my skin is wrinkly. I'm 60, but it's not as bad as I've seen a lot of other 60-year-olds. It's your diet, it's your nutrition, it's what's happening with your metabolism that's causing all of these things. And we need to talk about it, and we need to understand that if we take care of our metabolism, the rest of our body is going to function so much better than you can even imagine right now. And I talk about it because I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't believe in it. Here's the thing, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 3 years ago, it's time flies. I had a walker and a cane. I donated them. I hated to use the walker. In fact, I refused to use it most of the time, even though it was in my car. The cane was in my car right next to my driver's seat, so it was always there. Yeah, it was a leopard print cane. Yeah, yeah, I had to get something crazy. Um, but that was my life, and I couldn't go up and down stairs. I could no longer squat or deadlift. I was just in pain all the time. That on top of my sleep apnea, it was costing me sleep. And I started this system that I talk about to help my diabetes and to hopefully lose weight. I had no idea that it was going to save me from having a fourth joint replacement, that it was going to make all of the other stuff in my health feel better. Good morning, Dee Durham. How are you this morning? Miriam, welcome in. So, you guys, we've gone over some of that, but I talked a little bit about hormonal imbalances. Insulin resistance, I talked a little bit earlier about how it can affect your hunger and satiety hormones. It can affect cortisol, your stress hormone. It'll affect your adrenal glands. It can affect your thyroid hormone, which is another big piece of your metabolism. It can affect your sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And so it starts to have imbalance in all of those areas. Well, with our metabolism, and our metabolism is how we use energy, again, it's impeding by interrupting these hormones how our cells get energy so that they can replenish and regenerate. So those hormonal imbalances that insulin resistance can cause are not as directly as the inflammation, the oxidation, and the reduced blood flow, but it still is causing a problem with your joints and how they can rebuild. You have to have that energy, that hormone balance within the body for your body to rebuild muscle and bone. And in insulin resistance, that's completely out of whack. And it makes it so much harder. Um, then there's cellular changes. So your cells, in the presence of insulin resistance, remember, some cells are not wanting to take in insulin. Now, there's a couple of reasons why some cells won't take in insulin, and that is maybe they have some of those reactive oxygen species inside the cell. Maybe there's inflammation going on inside the cell. So the cell says, ooh, if I add more energy in here, the inflammation and the oxidation are going to increase because we're feeding it. So no, you can't come in. But that means that the cell is degrading. Now the cell is sick and it's not getting the energy to be able to repair because it's being really protective of not giving those sickening things, inflammation and oxidation, more energy. Your cells are breaking down because they're just not getting energy inside. And so that is contributing to this whole stack of things of why insulin resistance is causing joint pain, arthritis, muscle deterioration, all of that. So that's kind of the big picture of it. Now, again, all I did to change that around so that I've done videos, and it's silly, you guys. I do these videos like of me walking up and down the stairs. When I do those, you got to know that's how important it was to me. Like, do you know how embarrassing it was to walk into a gym to try and keep healthy, but I'm in so much pain that I cannot walk up and down stairs, and that I had to take the elevator in the gym. Once a world champion, I'm taking the elevator in the gym because I can't walk up and down stairs. That's freaking insane. And it's embarrassing, and I felt like less than human. And now I take the stairs not because I have to. There's an amazing elevator in my complex, but because I want to, because I want to make sure that my legs stay strong, because I want to make sure that my knees are healthy, because I want to know that I can go up and down the stairs. And I can now, without handrails, without pulling myself up, without feeling dizzy going down the stairs like I'm going to fall, because that was a problem too, you guys. Falls, bones are brittle, joints are at risk, and now you're dizzy and at risk for falls. It's not a good thing, and all of those are linked to insulin resistance. So I've been talking for a while. Does anybody have questions? Does anybody feel like this is them? Like, anybody starting to suffer with joint pain, and you're just frustrated, or maybe you've even had a joint surgery, and you don't want to go through another one, I'd love to hear your input, because every time I had to have a joint replaced, I was like, I never want to do this again. Why can't someone tell me how to fix this? They tell me it can be, but nobody tells me how. If that's you, let me know, because you absolutely can get your joints back. Now, what I talk about is this system. I'm drinking the tea, by the way, it tastes amazing. I look forward to the tea in the mornings, actually. So this is the system. I have a tea in the morning. I have a tea in the afternoon. So either at lunch or after lunch. It's not, you guys, it's not that hard. Stop complicating this. It's not so hard. A tea in the morning, a tea in the afternoon. If you want to have your two teas within 2 to 4 hours of each other, do that. It's food. I've had 5 of them in a day. It's food that's building health. The tea has a high amount of chlorogenic acids, mate saponins, theobromines. All that means are those are components that are really healthy for you. The chlorogenic acids help you with brain function. They're one of the components that we ingest that can actually cross something called the blood-brain barrier and get nutrients to your brain. So is there a reason why people see a spike of mental clarity and energy when they're drinking the tea? Yeah, because you're finally getting energy and nutrients to the brain. This is actually 375 times higher in that one component of chlorogenic acids than a standard bagged yerba mate tea. And so yerba mate tea. So why that tea? That's exactly why. The components that we're trying to get into people and give the best benefit are so much higher because we've extracted it and concentrated it, but then we've also taken it through a process called hyperpure that removes PAHs, pesticides, all of that. So now you have an extremely pure, highly concentrated form of this tea that many athletes even are starting to use around the world. And it does a great job with the mental energy, but it has anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, antioxidant properties that are all helping with all of the stuff surrounding why your joints are deteriorating. But it also helps you become more sensitive to insulin so that the cells can actually get the energy, the sugar into them. This helps with that. It also helps with GLP-1 production. GLP-1 is that glucagon-like peptide that's in Mounjaro, tirzepatide, all of that, that are synthetic models of that peptide that people are injecting, and you can produce it normally in your own body and increase the production of it without all the damaging side effects of the injectables by drinking the tea by up to 70% higher. This can induce your GLP-1 by up to 70%. Now, I want to talk about that a little bit because this is not the talk about that, but when we talk about GLP-1, some people will be like, well, if GLP-1 is so bad in the shots and this increases it by 70%, why is this so much better? Let's talk about it real quick. When your body produces GLP-1, it produces it in amounts that your body feels like it needs at the time, but it also is a degradable form of that peptide. So it works when it's supposed to, and then it kind of dies off and goes away. Those synthetic forms of GLP-1 are made so that they won't break down. So now your body is under constant influence of them, and our bodies are not meant to be under constant influence of anything. So that's why we start having a kind of in a broader aspect of why you start seeing things like pancreatitis in people who are taking the GLP-1s. People's kidneys fail, people's thyroid goes bad, people have all these other issues. And that's the least of it, but that's what happens when you're doing synthetic model of GLP-1. There's a risk for it. Some people never see the risk. It's not been used for weight loss long enough for us to understand the high doses that they're giving people. So producing it naturally is the way to do it. Your body gets the benefits of the peptide, and then the peptide kind of dies off and goes away. And then when you're drinking the tea again, or you're feeling that hunger, this allows that peptide, which is produced in your gut, to be made again. And when that happens, you feel a little satiety in your gut, but it's also sending messages to the brain that you're satiated there as well. It's allowing the neural pathways to work better in your brain. So all of that happens when you drink this tea. The tea, it's part of a system. You can get the tea all by itself, but it is part of a system. You get it in my profile. Just tap on the link up above, and that'll take you to my landing page where you can get it. So it's a highly concentrated extract of the yerba mate plant, and it's highly purified. A lot of science done on this particular product. So we have 2 of these a day, partly for the GLP-1 actions, for the satiety that it gives, the antioxidants, anti-inflammatories. You guys, we don't talk enough about it because it's a touchy subject out there in the medical world. I'm not going to tell you that you'll never have cancer if you drink this. Cannot ever make that claim, ever. But I'm going to tell you there's anti-cancer properties in this that are going to help increase your odds of staying healthy from that disease. Also, the reduced vascularity, the reduced oxygen, not oxidative stress, but oxygen getting to cells, that all starts to cause problems with cancer. So insulin resistance is related to things like prostate cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, not so much skin cancer, but all of those areas can be impacted. So you just get the tea in my profile, tap on that link. And here's the thing. You also get to text me. We get to have conversation. You get to ask me questions. I have had some amazing results from people. I've got to get some videos up of people who are losing tremendous amounts of weight, but more than that, feeling like their anxiety and depression is going away. Like they just have a better vibrancy to life. And that's all what happens when you start to get healthy from the inside out. So the tea is only part of the system, but it's going to give you a tremendous amount of energy, help you with that GLP-1 production, help with all the antioxidant stuff. But this, in a fasted state, one of the things we want in a fasted state is for our ketone levels to go up. Why? Because those ketones are telling us to burn all that excess fat that we're carrying around for fuel, because fat is stored fuel. But fat cannot be burned when insulin is out. So here's why. All of those people who are telling you eat every 2 hours, eat smaller meals, but every 2 hours, it's flawed. Every time you eat, you're spiking your insulin. Insulin is anabolic. It wants things to grow. It's not going to let you break down fat while it's present. So you have to get that insulin down and allow glucagon to come out and have these messengers called ketones telling us to burn fat. If you really want to lose weight, you've got to increase your insulin and increase your ketones and decrease your insulin. So that's part of the reason why we do some fasting. Now, this helps with all of that. Okay. But then what we do on the system is, before we eat, understanding that our foods are less nutrient dense than they used to be. If you're having fruits and vegetables and carbohydrates at all, you got to understand you're not getting in enough fiber to deal with the glucose that's created in your system. So bread, rice, potatoes, green vegetables, fruits and vegetables, those are all carbohydrates. So when you're eating them, it gets into your system and gets converted into glucose or energy, and then it gets delivered. But it's happening too quickly, and fiber is what's been stripped from our food that allows that to be slowed down. So if a diabetic is insulin resistant, why do they inject more insulin to people? Okay, so Michael, I'm so glad you asked that. Number one, it tells me you pay attention and all of that. So absolutely. I just got chills, Michael. You made me smile from the inside out with that question. Yay, somebody asked it. So they shouldn't be. Okay. If you're type 2 diabetic and they're giving you insulin injections, let's slow down. And they're doing it because it gets a little controversial here, but we have a food industry that wants us to eat more food. That's how they make money, right? They're talking about how we have this problem feeding the world, and yet they've jacked with our food so much that we're not getting nutrients. Now people are eating more, and we have more people in the world, and so it starts with the food industry. They want to sell more food. Big food and big pharma are very highly linked. Same families own both. But food is making you sick. And then big pharma is the thing that says, I'm going to fix you, right? But they're not. They're addressing symptoms, not the root cause. So what they reckoned before was giving you insulin, because if you're diabetic, they didn't look at it from the root cause part, right? So they were like, well, insulin is what delivers this energy. There's too much blood sugar in somebody's bloodstream. Let's give them more insulin so that that insulin can make sure that that sugar gets into their cells instead of racing around in the bloodstream. And at a very simple level, that sounds like that would work, right? Okay, if insulin is what delivers the sugar into the cells, what they're thinking is that you're not creating enough insulin. That's what happens with type 1 diabetics. With type 2 diabetics, though, you are producing insulin from your pancreas. It just can't keep up with the amount of crap we put in our face. So now they're like, okay, well, give them more insulin because that will help them deal with the crap they put in their face. But what they've found is that, and Dr. Bickman says it this way. Dr. Bickman, the metabolic scientist who's going around the world teaching about all of this, says this: giving a type 2 diabetic makes them sicker quicker, makes them fatter quicker, and kills them quicker. And when he explains in all of his science, and he's so very detailed and so very down to earth in the way he speaks, but he's educated doctors on this. And he's actually had doctors come to him and be like, you mean all this time when I've been trying to help this diabetic person and frustrated at them because they weren't getting better, that my insulin was making them sicker? Yeah. And many of those doctors are no longer prescribing insulin for their patients. You stopped your insulin about 8 days ago. So if you're type 2 diabetic and you've made that choice, understand that, yeah, exercising, it's working. So the system that I talk about helps with all of that. So fasting and exercising are the other two principles that I follow for anybody with 95% of us, right? So actually, it's 93% of us. A 2022 study showed 93% of us have some type of metabolic disorder. Insulin is at the root of that. So the 6 simple tips, you guys, are this: fiber first before you eat. Every time you eat, we are not getting in enough fiber to slow down the sugar spikes, okay? Prioritize protein, and this is how you should eat: fiber first, then your protein, then your fats, and then limit your carbs. So fiber, protein, and fats, those are the big 3. Fats are not things like omega-6s and trans fats and seed oils and safflower oil and all the stuff that they say is healthy on the shelf. Those are actually machine oils. Don't put them in your body. But things like avocado oil, coconut oil, um, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, those are the oils you should use. Butter and ghee, yes. Duck fat, lard, yes. The fats on your animal meats, yes. The yolks in your eggs, yes. Those are all fats you should be having. Fiber first, healthy fats, eating in a 6-hour window. That's perfect. That's amazing, because that's pretty much what we're talking about doing now. For a lot of people, that's harder, and I've known people who are doing that and still not able to get everything under control, and that's what the system is here for. So we're giving you the energy in the morning with the tea to have that energy, mental clarity, so you're not having the breakthrough hunger. It's giving you inflammatory and antioxidant properties, which the fasting and eating well is helping with that, but this just kind of super boosts it, and it's all real food. It's stevia, a little bit of citric acid, and the tea. That's it. Okay. So it's super clean. It's a food product. Now, when we do eat that fiber first, this is what I utilize. It gives about 5 grams of fiber, and it's been a long time since I should talk about this next Monday, fiber. There are so many studies that have shown that fiber can reduce a blood sugar spike, right? Most everybody knows that. Most dietitians know that. Most everybody talks about it. But most of the studies were done on a single source fiber like this, and it was like you could reduce your blood sugar spike by up to 10% with this, right? Great. And that reduction is great. But when we have this was scientifically designed, 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers designed specifically to reduce a blood sugar spike, to reduce cholesterol in the system. It has components in it that help with heart health. It has vitamins and minerals. So now it's a complete supplement before I eat anything. And I'm not experiencing nausea this morning. I normally have one in the morning. I might do it anyway, because this is what I think. I have more than one of these a day, and that's just because I know that when I'm doing this, I'm feeding the probiotics in my gut. So not only does this help slow down a blood sugar spike, help slow down cholesterol, but it's feeding the probiotics in my gut, which are starting to thrive now. And when you have good probiotics, then you have a better chance of those ketones and HGH actually working. You have a reduction of inflammation, you have a reduction of oxidation, all of that from the 7 different soluble and insoluble fibers in here. Now, this is also a recent study has shown that this will reduce a blood sugar spike up to 37%. So does the whole system is like $5 a day. 2 teas and 1 balance, that's $5 a day. I had a guy who his wife is on the system. She fell in love with the system and she was trying to get him to do it. And he was like, no, I'm taking this. And he put it in his lunch every day. And one day he didn't have it. He had run out. And he's like, oh no, I forgot to go to the store and get more. So she was like, oh, let me just give you some of mine. And he's like, oh, fine, whatever. And she put it in his lunchbox. He came home that day and said, never ever buy this again. It does not work the same. It was real world. Like he just said, nope, okay, I'm ready now. I'm going to start doing what you're doing. So the 5 grams of fiber in this, because they're so targeted, actually do more work than 5 grams of that fiber. And you need to understand that there are different types of fiber and each one does something different in the body. And we've combined the ones that are the most effective for blood sugar and cholesterol in this product, not in that one, in this one. It's part of the system that's $5 a day. So thank you for all the love, you guys. So just 1 month and a half ago, you were in the ICU. Ooh, 13.5. What's your A1C now? Remember, your A1C is a 3-month picture. So wait another month and a half and check your A1C again. It's a long-term snapshot of what's happening with your blood sugars. Your blood sugars are in the moment. That's the reading you get when you do your fasting blood sugars. The A1C gives a trend over time of what's happened with your blood sugar. So it gives an average. So what a 13.5 means is that sometimes your blood sugars are lower, but sometimes they're really high. And 13.5, for anybody who doesn't know, and user 1332, you already know because you've experienced it. That A1C being that high is deadly. It's not good. Like I was freaked out when mine was 7.4. That's the highest it got. And I was like, I'm taking care of this. And that I just happened to, you guys, this wasn't like, oh, Misha's so smart and she did. No, I was on TikTok. I heard a guy talking about it. I felt like my back was up against a wall. And I'm like, I got to do something or I'm going to die. And I have grandkids and I have a family and I'm not ready. I need to help them. And so I saw the system and I'm like, man, $5 a day, do the calculation over a month. Like, how am I going to afford that? But because of the state I was in, I was like, how can I not afford it? It has a 90-day money back guarantee. So if it doesn't work for you, you get your money back. And so I went into this like, okay, I'm going to try it. And hopefully it works, but I was really skeptical. I didn't believe it would. You guys, I was not a believer from the get-go. I was skeptical. I was like, I've tried everything. I've done the medical medium. I've done keto. I've done veganism. I've done all the stuff and I've created all the crazy shakes and done all the like loads of herbs in my cabinet. I used to make my own healing teas, all of this stuff. I'm like, I've tried everything. How could this one thing work? But I was desperate and I tried it. And lo and behold, it worked. Skin tags are gone. Skin discoloration is gone. My skin is firmer and tighter. My eyesight is returning. My hair is longer than it's been in my lifetime. My teeth and gums stopped bleeding. My dizziness went away. My joints stopped deteriorating. I lost weight. My diabetes got reversed. My hypertension is now reversed. All of that because I addressed insulin resistance. That was it. So keep up the good work, user 1332. I cannot wait till till you have a really great story. I come back and let me know how you're doing in a couple of months. And just, yeah. And I love that you're doing everything. But if you're interested in helping that along, try the system. And then for everyone else, like if you're like me, I was stuck. I was so sugar addicted, food addicted, and I didn't know why. Part of it's my ADHD. There's a dopamine hit problem there. And yes, ADHD people, ADD people tend to be more insulin resistant than people who are not because of this dopamine receptor problem we have. So fiber first works. Absolutely, it does. You guys, I have fiber before I eat anything. It doesn't matter if it's a small meal or a big meal. Now, I will say this, like I've adopted this thing, yes, I listen to a lot of different people, but I've adopted this thing. I was never a red meat eater because I had an allergic reaction to beef. But it's also beef is really healthy for your heart and your cholesterol. There's so many studies, recent studies coming out showing how actually healthy that red meat is for us as human beings. Now, so I have a steak a day. A steak a day keeps the heart doctor away. But when I have the steak, I don't always have the fiber before that. It's not really necessary because I don't add anything but some spices to the steak. I eat it pretty clean. But anything else I eat, if there's bread involved, if there's carbohydrates involved, I have this first. And bread, you guys, we need to stop thinking of carbohydrates as just bread. So broccoli, bell peppers, corn is not a vegetable, it's a grain, but tomatoes, all of those things are carbohydrates. And so we don't want to demonize them, but we want to understand that when we're eating them, we need fiber to go along with them to slow down how much they spike our blood sugars. And that's going to be different for everyone. What spikes my blood sugar really high, maybe just fine in your body. That's where genetics plays a role. I'm Native American. My family comes from the Great Lakes area. We didn't have a lot of fruits and vegetables, cranberries, a lot of cranberries. A lot of the rest of it was red meat. So that's where my body thrives per genetics. Your body's going to be very different based on your genetics. So understand that just because tomatoes may spike my blood sugar, they may not spike yours the same way, depending on how your body deals with it. Michael, you've been on the system 9 weeks, down 60 pounds. Your A1C is now 8.8. It was 8.8, down to 6.7. Michael, I might get a hold of you. I'd love to can I do a story about you on my timeline? I would love to do that and highlight your success so somebody else can understand how this can change for them. You carnivore and FGS. Yeah, I'm not full on carnivore, but I'm leaning that way. I am gearing up to start doing some longer fasts again, a 36 and 12 fast because of so I'll reach out to you after the live, Michael, and let's get together and highlight your success because that's amazing. I don't want to glaze over that 8.8 down to 6.7. 6.7 is getting down into the level where doctors may be more comfortable, right? 8.8 was pretty high, and I'm sure your doctor was scared, and for good reason. Hey, Skelly, it's been so long. It's good to see you here. I really do miss you. I talk about you a lot. All right. In a good way. I would never talk about you in a bad way. I just want to clarify that. Hi. Okay, so first time, what was the topic about? So we were talking about how your joint pain is linked to insulin resistance. This whole thing will be on YouTube. I don't go into super depth, but I want to tell you this. So what we talked about today was that insulin resistance is causing joint problems and joint pain because it's increasing inflammation It's increasing oxidation, which just means that your cells and your joints are rusting. It's decreasing the blood flow, so your joints are being starved of nutrients it needs. It's putting excess weight on you, putting your body more at risk. It's disrupting your hormones that are allowing your metabolism to work correctly and even get energy to cells. So there's two ways you're not getting the energy. And because you're not getting all the energy, because you have this inflammation and oxidation, and they all are caused by insulin resistance, now you have this cellular degradation because cells are just under fire and your joints start to fail. Not just the bone in the joint, you start building up these little nodules of excess calcium and stuff in places that's mine were like really jagged inside. Um, and I haven't gone over that. Let me do some more research on those bone spurs and how that's related to insulin resistance, because I think that's something we should cover. But there's a number of ways that insulin resistance is deteriorating your joints, and your joints can actually regrow. Even at 60, in my late 50s, I was supposed to have a knee replaced, and it no longer needs to be replaced. And this is after I already had two hips replaced and the other knee replaced. It no longer needs replaced because I addressed insulin resistance. In the beginning, I didn't know why. I just knew that, right? I didn't know why, all the science, and this is how my brain works. I love the science parts. Like I've got to make sense out of stuff. It's not good enough to tell me that it happens. I got to know why. So that's just my brain. But I did know that my joints started feeling better. That knee that would slide out of joint every night, and you guys, literally, I would wake up in the night and have to grab my leg and put my joint back in place. Painful, excruciating, so that I could roll over or change positions because my joints were failing. When I started to address the insulin resistance, it didn't happen overnight, but it happened as time went on, as I was focused on getting my blood sugars down, getting my blood pressure down. The joint really wasn't the big thing for me at that point because my blood pressure was so out of control and a number of other things that I was like, okay, my leg's bad, but I'm going to die. So I addressed all of that. And along the way, that knee got better, and I did not have to have surgery in 2022. The knee is actually stronger than it has been for years, and I now can walk up and down stairs. Don't have a walker, a cane in my house. Don't even care. I can get down, up and down. Like I've been doing furniture reflipping. Have anybody guys seen my stories? I got to put some more up today because I finished that one piece I've been working on. But working on those pieces, what you don't see on the backside is that like that one piece that I've been working on is huge and heavy, and it has a granite top. I was able to get the granite top off all by myself, took some logistics and understanding leverage and all this stuff, got that put away, repainted the entire piece, which means I'm crawling inside the piece on the floor, bending over, doing all the stuff. 3 years ago, I would have said, oh, hell no. If I get on the floor, I'm stuck there. That's not me today. Do I get up as quickly as I did in my 20s? No. But I'm doing all of this crazy stuff that feeds my soul, and I can now. I don't have any more joints degrading. It's amazing. I started to try, and you guys, when you have joint pain, if you're not there yet, just understand this. When you get to that point where your joints are at risk, where your joints are just in pain all the time, you start to move differently. You start to move less, and your body loses the memory. It doesn't really lose the memory, but it loses the ability to move like it used to. I used to run all the time. I did track and field. I did basketball. I played basketball with my kids until my late 30s. All of this stuff. I was having a hard time walking without clunking, without being funny, because my patterns were changed because of the joint pain. So I've had to retrain myself how to walk like a lady. I've had to retrain myself how to go up and down stairs. I've had to start to retrain myself to jump or skip or run, because those were things I couldn't do 3 years ago. This system that I took to help my diabetes fixed my joint health. And that's freaking amazing. So if you're suffering and you want help, you want to, you guys try it for 90 days. And when you start to feel better throughout your life, throughout your energy, and your sleep cycles are better, and ladies' body odors start to change because now you're feeding good microbiome instead of the negative microbiome, a number of things start to happen. And then you'll be like, well, what happens if I just stay doing this and give my body the chance to heal? You'll be shocked at how much your body can heal when you just give it the tools it needs. Why the system? Because the system is just replacing the stuff that's been stripped out. It's like bridging that gap. The food industry has created this huge cavernous canyon in our nutrients. And we're standing on one side and we're trying to get to the other side, but there's this big gap and we just can't jump that far. The system just bridges that gap and allows us to have the food we love and get the nutrients we need so that our bodies can heal. That's really what it's about. And you guys get that in my profile. Now, I haven't I wanna say this. Don't just run to Amazon, eBay, Walmart. You pay more. They're deceptive about what you're getting. You're not getting the same product. You're not getting the same amounts, and almost every person that I've spoken to that was like, "Well, Misha, I ordered and I didn't hear from you." Well, you bought on Amazon, so I wouldn't know, and you don't get the guarantees, and you don't get my coaching, and again, there's pirated, expired products out there, and then some of those people have paid $100 to $200 more than they needed to because they were trying to go through Amazon, eBay, Walmart. There are no authorized sellers on those platforms. Order from somebody reputable, and I'm actually directly linked to the company. Tired, hair loss. Okay, A1C is 5.8. Tracy, your A1C is not bad. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but really, it's at pre-diabetic range, right? Has your doctor told you that's considered pre-diabetic? Now, some doctors are going to say pre-diabetic. Some doctors are going to be like, there is no pre-diabetic or diabetic. It's just all diabetic. So ideally, your A1C should be below 5.6. If your A1C is climbing, even that small amount, it's telling you that you already have insulin resistance. All of this stuff it could be happening. Maybe you're hungry all the time. Maybe you're more tired than you used to be. Maybe you have more brain fog, or you just don't have energy, or you're having problems with sugar cravings, or you get cold after you eat. All of those things can be signs of insulin resistance. And even at 5.8, that's true. Okay, so user 2779, tired, hair loss, acne. You're 53, weight around the waist, eczema. What is no, they didn't even address it. Yeah, they're not trained to talk about insulin resistance. You guys, it's sad. But that A1C starting to climb, let's be clear, by the time your A1C is climbing, you are highly insulin resistant. Because if your body can't utilize the energy and now it's starting to show up in your blood work, that means your body's not doing energy right. And so there's a problem. Address it before it becomes diabetes. By the time it becomes diabetes, like I lost joints, I lost my gallbladder, I have damage to my heart, my ears were ringing so horribly. All of this stuff happened before anyone ever diagnosed me with diabetes. Okay. So your triglycerides are 271. That's pretty high. Tracy, do you know what your HDL is? Do you know what that is? And we'll give you a calculation. So, tired, hair loss, 53, weight around the waist, eczema. What is the thing? So all of those are linked to insulin resistance. Now, is insulin resistance the only thing that can cause these things? No, it's not. Is it the predominant thing that causes them? Yes, it is. So when somebody comes to me with a list that says, I'm tired all the time, I'm losing hair. Okay, so tired, your brain's not getting energy, your hormones are out of balance. Losing hair, your hormones are out of balance. Could be thyroid, could be sex hormones. Insulin is driving an imbalance in your hormones. Acne, your skin is your first warning system of anything going on in your body. And through, and I cannot, you guys, I'm not as I know the answer, but it's not coming to me right now. But acne, so things like skin takes, skin discoloration, acne, especially cystic acne, those are all linked to insulin resistance. So now we start looking at you and we're going, this one, this one, this one. It actually, everything that you just listed is linked to insulin resistance. So when we take a big picture of that, instead of trying to look at each separate one, and we look at this and be like, what's the commonality in all of these things? And we understand that insulin is that one commonality, then address your insulin and you can start to feel better. That's what I'm going to tell you. I don't know anyone who's addressed their insulin issue and not felt better. That's important to understand. So how we're addressing insulin, it's 6.5. Whew, Tracy, girl. Okay, so 6.5 is huge. So the calculation is your triglycerides divided by your HDL. Ideally, that number should be 1.5 or less. That's telling you you're probably insulin safe, right? But anything over 2 is insulin resistance. Anything over 3, Dr. Bickman and the NIH will say address it. You're at 6.5. You need to address it, just like heartfelt. Whether you do my system or what, you've got to address it, honey, or you're going to be in trouble. Okay. All right. So how? So what I'm doing is this. I just got a hair on my nose. I have a tea in the morning, a tea in the afternoon, and a pre-meal drink before I eat. And why those things? The tea in the morning. So let's first go over the 6 simple tips again. Fiber first. Every time you eat, before you eat. Prioritize protein. That should be the next thing on your plate. Don't fear fats like avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee, lard, duck fat. Collect the eggs, the yolks in your eggs. Those are all healthy fats. Not what you've been told, but those are the healthy ones. Stay away from the seed oils, the canola oils, those things. I'll do a whole other talk on that maybe next week. Those fats are high in omega-6s, and they actually increase your insulin resistance. So stay with the ones I talked about. Think about it like this. If you can squeeze it and it's oily, that's a fat you should have. But if you can't get that like really oily feeling from squeezing it, don't eat it. It's not meant to be used as a fat. Okay. So fiber first, prioritize protein. Don't fear the right fats, limit your carbs, and then do some time-based eating and move your body. Time-based eating is a simple 16-8 fast, allowing the insulin to come down so that you start to become more sensitive to it. Why the system? I'm in a fasted state. We're closing in on 16 hours now. So this tea helps me feel satiated. It's giving me energy. It's helping me be more sensitive to the sugars that are in my body. It increases ketones, which are helping me burn fat for fuel, increases mental energy and clarity and physical energy and performance by up to 10 to 15%. And then before I eat, I have this. It's a multi-complex of fibers, phytosterols, vitamins, and minerals aimed to and scientifically designed improvement to reduce a blood sugar spike. I have this before I eat anything, and that's it. So the oils, yeah, sure. The oils that I talk about, Dr. Bickman talks about, are these. Extra virgin olive oil. You guys do not buy olive oil in a clear bottle. That's a seed oil with some olive oil in it, so they can call it a light olive oil, but you're still getting all the seed oil. Your avocado oil and your extra virgin olive oil should be in a dark green or brown bottle because light will make them oxidize. And you should only keep those oils around for a couple of months and then replace them if you haven't used them. Okay. Avocado oil and extra virgin olive oil. My oil of choice is the extra virgin olive oil. Is it more expensive? Yes. But cooking the way I cook, I don't use a lot of it anyway. And now I don't have all the inflammation and the problems. Extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee. Ghee is just butter with some of the allergens, the lactose removed. Duck fat and lard, right? Animal rendered fats. And that's pretty much it. So any of the fat that's on your, like, my son is always like, oh, I don't want that piece of steak because it's fatty. And I'm like, yeah. Do you know that your protein intake needs that fat because the cell around the muscle, the cell that holds the muscle together, is made of fat. So if you're not eating those healthy fats, you start to have brittle cells. Okay. So those are the oils. And so stay away from anything that's not those few oils. The main ones I want you to think about are avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, and butter. Okay. Just focus on those. Stop cutting the fat off your steak. In fact, now that I've been eating this way, I just my weight maintains much better. I don't have all the energy problems. I actually crave that more. But when I buy steak, I'm looking for the fattier cuts because I know that when I ingest that protein, part of the protein is building blocks and part of it is energy. But as I'm building the healthy muscle in my body and just the healthy cells, the cell membranes need the fat. Because we're damaging our cells when we're eating those toxic oils, trans fats and omega 6s, and we're like cutting all the fat out of everything else. When we have, you think of yogurt and sour cream and cottage cheese and those things, if you have those, I still use some sour cream. Don't buy the low fat. They're pumped full of chemicals to have them have consistency when they remove the fat. Just have I avoid any reduced fat dairy product like the plague. If I have those reduced fat ones, that's when my IBS returns with a fury. If I have the full fat ones, no problem. Okay, so those are the ones. Um, do I recommend a brand of what, Kimmy? I don't know what the brand was, the oils. Oh, I don't have one. I just read the labels. I don't buy a lot of oil, to be honest. If I cook, generally I cook in butter. Sometimes I'll use olive oil, so the olive oil lasts me a long time. The butter, I like to get, like, there's one from Finland that's pretty pure called Finlandia. I happen to find that at one of the grocery stores. That's probably more obscure. Something like Kerrygold is good. I also like, um, gosh, it's a farm on the West Coast. But with the butter, also read the labels. I'm the by far my favorite one is probably Kerrygold from Ireland. And that should be found at just about any grocery store now. But why can't I think of the name of that creamery that is on the West Coast in Oregon? Tillamook. Tillamook. That's the one. Okay. But read the label on your package of butter. Make sure that it's whole milk solids and that they and maybe some salt and that they haven't thrown anything else in. I never buy the unsalted butter. I know the salted butter browns quicker, burns easier, blah blah. I just buy the salted butter. I don't get into all of that stuff. I like salt, by the way. Costco has it. Okay. Yeah. So, olive oil. So the olive oil is the trickier one, right? Um, I don't even remember the brand I bought. I the couple of things I look at are I just read the label. As soon as it lists anything that's not olive oil, I put it back. The other thing is that the olive oil should be sourced from as few places as possible. When there's I cannot remember the reasoning. I was listening to a doctor talk about it, but the oils that are olive oil, and they have like 6 or better countries that they've sourced the olive oil from, he gave a very definite explanation as to why they're less healthy than oils. Basically, you want it sourced from as few places as possible. One, if possible, that's pretty expensive. In a dark green or brown bottle, those are the things I pay attention to. I want to make sure it doesn't have any sneakily hidden um, oils in it, seed oils, and the rest is gravy, whatever, as long as it's sourced from as few places as possible and doesn't list any of those other additives to it, then I will buy it. Pompeian olive oil is in a dark green bottle. So, Michael, I haven't researched that one. I think that I've looked at that one before, but you guys just do some looking when you pick up the bottle and see what's in it. Just actually read that label and then you'll know. But yeah, if it's in a dark green bottle, that's step one. Like, I gravitate to the dark green bottle. That's the first thing. Ooh, this is pretty. I like it because I know that this isn't going to be an oxidized, trashy oil. But if you're getting a good olive oil, know that once you uncap that, you only have a few months before that needs to be used up or tossed. So, especially when you're buying these more expensive oils, unless you fry a lot, buy a small bottle and just replace it more often. Kimmy, I'm so happy. that you get value from it. Like, you guys literally, some days it's hard for me to get up. Like, I love sharing information, but some days it's hard for me to get up and talk about all this stuff. Just because I don't have the energy for it. So I sat down and said a little prayer this morning that whoever needed the information was going to be who was here and get it. And I hope that's happened. And just to soften my heart and be in more place of a service. So it means a lot to me when you give me that kind of feedback. And I appreciate that so much. Thank you. That actually made my morning. Now I know that what I do matters, and that's what really matters, is that it matters to you guys. Okay. I hope that you're getting help from all this information. So anybody else have questions? Um, and let's see, I know I want to talk more about fiber next week. There was something else we were talking about. I do anything else you guys want to talk about next week that I can prepare. Some of the bigger things I talk about the most often are like the heart disease, because that's a personal story, the PCOS, but anything you see on the list, if you want to talk about it, kidney and liver disorders, we haven't talked about those in a while. That might be something we should talk about next week because gallbladder, right? Gallbladder's attached to the liver's sick, the gallbladder's sick. Now we have all these women losing their gallbladder and they don't tell you what happens on the other side. So that would be a good one. Just message me if you guys want to talk about something. I appreciate all of your input, your attention, your time this morning. Go have a really good weekend. My family finally moved to Kentucky, so I'm all alone. No, I am it's hard. I am so family driven that, even though it's only a few months, I have like I found myself in overwhelm more. That's why I'm doing the furniture flipping to take my mind off the fact that my family's not here. So have a good weekend. I might go live this weekend and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the struggles that I've in my whole life change and some topics to help with that too. But I appreciate you all. I'm going to quit rambling and I'm going to get to work and have a great weekend. We'll see you guys Monday. And thank you, thank you, thank you again for your time and input. You guys are so amazing. And I'm so blessed to be able to have this opportunity. Have a good day. Thank you guys.